everybody. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. Today, as part of our marriage series, we're going to be talking about communication. Pretty important.
Very important.
It's very important.
Yeah. Number one, probably.
Could be.
Could be.
Yeah. So there's a number of different forms of communication. We got verbal communication, which I'm doing right now to you. Got nonverbal communication, which is just as important. And then there's an extremely important element to communication. It's called listening.
Yes. Listening.
Listening.
Very important.
Yes. And there's also one other element I'm going to add, and that's latent meaning behind the communication. All right?
Sounds exciting.
It does sound exciting. So, did you know in marriage therapy, for the longest time, they had often researched and felt that one of the main reasons behind marital conflict is a person lacks skills in communicating.
I would believe that.
Did you know?
Am I wrong?
The research has actually demonstrated that's not exactly right.
Oh. Okay.
So what they would try to do in therapy, in this research settings, they would teach the people various communication skills, supposing that the marriage would get better. It didn't always get better, so the effect of the therapy wasn't as good as they had hoped.
Okay.
Now there's a number of reasons behind that. We're going to talk about a few of them here. But we live in a very multifaceted world, and there's a lot of variables in every single thing. You know, for example, the study may not have taken into consideration financial problems or infidelity, all sorts of different things like that. We have to realize that there are so many variables behind every single thing that we may not be able to isolate just one. Nonetheless, it's still good to know how to communicate.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. You would agree with that?
I would agree with that.
Okay. Now, some of the research that I just referenced found a couple of things that moderated. Basically, it's other variables that they didn't consider in the research study that impacted why teaching communication skills didn't work as well as they thought they would.
What were those?
You want to know what
I do. I
Okay.
want to know.
Number one is motivation. We'll get into this. I'm going to give you all three of them, actually. So motivation, skill, which is what we just talked about, and communication behavior. Those three things are very, very important. Now, guess what motivation means? Am I putting you on the spot?
You are. It's sort of like, the way I would define it, and this isn't going to make sense, is like your get up and go, right? But I think in this instance it means what's sort of driving you, what's behind what you're doing.
We can use that.
Okay.
You're communicating that quite well.
Okay.
It's speaking to the person's intent.
Yeah, intent.
What is the intention behind what's being said? That's extremely important. So let's say I get home and my spouse says, "Ron, why didn't you take out the garbage?"
Which I've said a lot.
Which she has said. Now, I'm going to basically look at this whole situation, her tone of voice, when she said it. Was it right when I came through the door, or was it after a while, or was it when I went to go put something in the garbage? I'm going to look at her facial expressions, and if she has a weapon in her hand. Okay?
These can be weapons.
They are weapons.
I'm a wuss.
The gun store. Right? Now, this has happened to me in the past. And so I've come in, you said, "Ron, why didn't you take out the garbage?" And I thought, you know what she's probably really saying is that I'm lazy. And that she expects that I'll just be a lazy slob living in the basement doing nothing.
I wish he'd live in the basement.
I wish I did too. Or, if it wasn't her calling me lazy, because I'm perceiving her intent is calling me lazy, maybe she's just saying that she does everything around the house and I don't do anything.
Everything.
Now I have to admit, 90% of the time, I truly believe that's what she's communicating to me.
And 90% of the time, that's what I'm feeling.
That is. Even though it's not true.
It's 90% true.
Or simply, did she just asked me the question because she wants to know if I took out the garbage.
Right. Because the garbage man's coming in the morning.
Yeah.
Did you take out the garbage?
It's always important to know the intent or the motivation behind what a person is communicating. And it's not always clear. Let me give you one other example. So let's say my wife comes home and she went out to lunch with someone, and I ask her, hey, who'd you go to lunch with? What might my intentions be?
So I might think off the bat, you know, what, is he calling me a hussy? Like I went out to, that's his favorite word, hussy.
Hussy and Dolly Bird. Heading out to you, detectorists.
Is he calling me a hussy? Does he not trust me? So that could be one thing.
You stepping out on me?
Yeah, right?
Or I say, who'd you go to lunch with? And you might think...
I might be thinking, he's on my case again about spending money all the time. Always on my case. How much money did I spend?
Yep. Or you might also think...
He thinks I'm fat. I shouldn't go to lunch. I'm too fat. I should have just had that lettuce. I'm too fat. He thinks I'm fat.
Or what I really meant is I hope you guys had a good time at lunch. Now, there are a number of ways to try to figure out what my intent really is. And I mentioned sometimes it's not easy. You have to read the nonverbal behaviors, which can be kind of difficult sometimes.
Right.
Regarding that last example, what happens if I say, who did you go to lunch with?
Right. That seems like he's suspicious and jealous.
Or...
Right? That affect on his face.
Yeah. Yeah.
That accusatory
tone.
I'm
serious. Who did you go to lunch with?
I didn't go out to lunch today.
Or what if I just said, hey, who'd you go to lunch with today?
Oh, just Rebecca.
This type of very subtle, it's actually not even subtle. The nonverbal behavior is extremely important in understanding what's being communicated.
But you as on the other side, I don't know what the right word is, you're listening to his communication. You got to pay attention to those, right? You need to be aware of how is he saying this? What is his tone? What does his face look like? What are his hand gestures? So you can interpret what he's saying. Absolutely.
Because going back to that research, one of the things that they found was the communication behavior. And that's what we're talking about now, is how are we behaving as we communicate. There are a lot of telltale signs related underneath the surface with our behavior. That gives you a ton of information. Now, let's say, for example, I tell students this all the time. What happens if you're sitting there giving me a presentation? I'm just kicking back in the chair just on my phone, you know, scanning YouTube or Facebook or something like that. What's that communicating to the student?
You're not interested.
I'm not interested.
Yeah. Well, and we do that a lot, I think, as married people, right? And we'll probably have a whole episode on this, but we spend so much time on our phones or in front of the TV that we're really not engaged in the conversation. I can't tell you how many times Ron will bring something up like, oh, you know, it's Friday night. We've got plans with so-and-so. And I'm like, what? I have no idea. Well, we had the conversation. I just was not at all paying attention because I was on my phone or whatever. So, yeah, that's an important behavior, is really, you know, engage in the conversation.
Absolutely. That's a good example, too. Think about your everyday behavior and what that's communicating to your spouse. Getting home, sitting in front of the television with the phone in front of your face, not communicating at all, although you are communicating non-verbally.
You're saying, I don't really want to hang out with you. I'd rather, you know, look at my Instagram.
Yeah. Yep. And there's a number of other things that communicate.
So I don't know if this is on your list of things, but it's coming to my mind. I have what you call an RBF. If you don't know what that means, that's resting biatch face. It is just my natural look on my face looks ornery. And maybe it comes from years of just being an ornery person. But normally I'm just fine. Like I'm just chilling, hanging out, but that look on my face is like, I'm gonna kill somebody. And so I'm not even consciously communicating that, but people like think I'm rude. Like I don't know, like a biatch, I guess. And so that will come across. Ron, I think, understands now. That's just my natural face. But other people don't know. And so you need to be aware of those those nonverbal cues that you're giving off with your body language and your facial expressions. And
someone at our church came up to me and said, "Why does your wife want to beat me up?"
I'm not sure I even know who they are. This, like, I feel so bad. Ron and I have our arguments and stuff sometimes, but like in a social setting, I think I'm super nice. Like, maybe I'm kidding myself, but yeah, it's just that.
No, this is another good example of communication. Maybe unintentional. It's interesting when she talks to me, and then when she gets a phone call. She is the sweetest person on the phone, but when it's me, she's being really sweet right now.
I know.
You should see behind the
It's
scenes.
that public. I'm trying to look good in public. No, it is true though. So,
what does that communicate to me? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
So I have a job where sometimes I have to deal with difficult people and difficult situations, but they're my client, and I have to maintain that relationship. And so I, all day at work, am being nice to people. And when you've had just a crap day, you can be done being nice. And I think a lot of us do this. We get home, and now we're just ornery and pissy, and we take it out on our spouse. But, I could get a work phone call, hey, it's Heather, how are you? Super nice again. I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, there's an important element here. Notice I kept saying, what does that communicate to me? What does that communicate to me? And it's important because her behavior is communicating to me. But I also have to know, and this is what I tell my clients, know your partner and know thyself. I try to understand typically where your partner's coming from, but you also have to know yourself. If you tend to be a little bit oversensitive, you're going to tend to read things a certain way. If you tend to be a little bit emotionally numb, you're going to read things a certain way. You have to know yourself and filter that information coming in from your partner through that understanding of how you tend to be.
Well, let me turn this around on you. So Ron's job, he's, working with clients all day and listening to their difficulties and traumatic stories, and, that's his day all day. And it's very draining, and it can get probably I'm speaking for you, I don't know, probably a little overwhelming. So when he gets home, he's very quiet. He doesn't want to talk a lot. He doesn't want to talk about his day. He just wants to be quiet. And I had to learn that it's not that he doesn't want to talk to me. He just needs that time to decompress and chill out and let the day sort of float away.
That's perfect. And why don't we stick here for a second? That's another element that I wanted to discuss. People who have very social jobs, sometimes when they're not very social themselves, maybe they're a little bit introverted, it wears them out. That persona that they have to wear on the outside of the house is not worn inside the house, and for good reason. And I know with me, basically I have 3 grunts. I communicate in grunts.
Yeah, he does.
When I get home, she'll ask every day, how was your day? And it's either, and that's it. That's all she needs to know. I can't talk confidentiality talk about this stuff anyways, but yeah, I don't want to talk about it. Did you also know? Nancy McWilliams, a famous analyst. Anyways, love you, Nancy. She wrote a lot on the psychoanalysts in particular, but therapists in general, tend to develop schizoid tendencies throughout their career. And schizoid tendencies has nothing to do with schizophrenia. Okay. It's basically an internalization where it's difficult to communicate because we become so internalized because that's what we have to do. We have to take everything in and hold it, and so we become schizoid.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
It's already happened.
Well, and it's interesting, you talked about being introverts. I think both of us are pretty introverted. But we both, in totally different ways, have fairly, Ron especially has a social job. He's talking and listening all day long. I'm interacting with clients and contractors and vendors, and so we have to sort of put on that extroverted persona, and it can wear on you. And so you get home and it's not like you get back to normal, you almost dip below what your normal would be.
Absolutely, because you're wore out.
Yeah. Right.
Well, great. Do you have anything else on this?
I don't think
Okay, so we just discussed, I mentioned 3 things from the research that they found. The motivation, the skills, and the behaviors. So far we've talked about motivation, and we've talked about the behaviors, which is the nonverbal, latent types of behaviors. And let's talk about skills.
All right.
This is probably why
Nunchuck skills?
Nunchuck.
Sorry.
Oh my goodness, that was terrible. We should at least leave you with some sort of skills, and I think we should leave them with some of the basic skills. In fact, this is a skill that all therapists are taught, and therapists typically teach it to their clients as well. It's very basic, and it's really important. And yeah, it's called reflective listening or active listening. Now, there's also another thing therapists are taught. It's called the Rogerian head nod. And I swear, when I see people do that, I want to slap them.
Is it this?
No, active listening or reflective listening. Notice it's not talking about active speech. It's talking about listening. So, there's a few basic steps in this. Your spouse says something. You listen, and you're not creating your argument. You're not thinking ahead. You're in the moment thinking about what they're saying.
You're not thinking about what your response is going to be.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be an argument, but just your response.
Exactly. And of course, you're looking for body language and all the other stuff that they're communicating as well. Try to better understand what's happening, what they're trying to say. Well, never assume anything. You need to verify. And so what you do then, after you've listened and you process through it real quickly, you say, okay, let me make sure I got this straight. And then you repeat it back. You reflect it back, and you then get feedback. All right? You have to get feedback. So let's try it.
Okay. You start.
You want me to start?
Yeah.
Let me
Because I don't know what to start.
Let me bring up a gripe. So I'm going to express something. I want you to look for emotional cues, non-verbal cues. I want you to listen to what I'm saying, and I want you to try to really understand what I'm trying to get across.
Okay.
And in therapy, this is called, basically, it's reflection. Well, yeah, it's basically just reflection, and that's important.
Okay. Is this something that you, if you're doing like couples counseling, you have them do in a session? Okay.
Yeah, usually I'm demonstrating it nonstop, and then I'll point out, I notice this is how you're communicating, and then I'll say, I think what she is trying to say or what he is trying to say, so I'm demonstrating the process, and then after they get sick of hearing me say that, I'll look at one of them and say, what do you think they're trying to say? Okay? And so that's what I do in therapy. And it gets them practicing over and over and over again this simple skill of listening. All right?
All right.
Okay, well, I have something that really bothers me. I don't even... I don't even know if I can talk about it.
Well, tell me. What is it? What's wrong?
That's not how you do it.
Okay.
No. Just let me...
I thought I was being so good.
Don't get me wrong. That was nice.
Okay, let's...
But it's not exactly...
Why don't I bring up the gripe and you respond in the right way?
Okay.
Since I don't know how to do this. Okay. Let me think of a good one. I am so frustrated. I had the worst day today.
Okay. Rogerian head nod.
Look on his face.
So, and I'm actually trying to reflect back a little bit of her frustration, not in a fake way, but it's too bad. So you were frustrated?
So frustrated. Yeah, I could have punched them in the throat.
Okay.
I'm might punch you in the throat. I'm sorry for making this worse.
Yeah, she was making this difficult. All right, so I don't think I've... Now I'm going to reflect an emotion. I don't think I've seen you this angry in a long time.
Oh, I am so, so mad. I can't believe they did that.
Mm-hmm. Well, what got you so mad? Now I'm using her words.
They just like came in, trampled all over what I was doing, acted like it was their own. Oh, so mad.
All right, brownie point here. Hon, I hate to see you so tense. Tell me more.
Do I have to keep going?
No. Anyways, it's real basic. Notice I didn't jump in. I didn't offer solution, which guys tend to do. No,
What is the classic? Settle down, right?
I don't ever remember saying that to you. The guys in general.
Guys in general,
Okay.
I think we'll say that. Calm down, settle down, relax.
Let's just get straight to the solution, which I'm a guy and my head works like that. Let's get to the solution. But I've been trained not to do that, honestly.
But I think, and this is sort of a classic, like, women, I think in general, they're not always looking for a solution. They just want to talk about it. They want to express how they're feeling, vent, maybe for a minute, and just sort of work through it verbally. They're not looking for their husband to solve the problem most of the time, I would say.
Right.
Right.
Guys,
you just want someone to listen.
That's right. Guys, I also want to point something out. Listening, don't solve the problem. But I did something that a lot of guys struggle with, and that's actually identify an emotion and then reflect that back and basically empathize with that emotion. Now, I will guarantee you, maybe I'm not as confident with this, but I about said it again. Maybe I am that confident. I guarantee women can name more emotions than guys. I have literally asked guys, given them this assignment. Your assignment this week is to interpret and identify the emotion that your spouse is trying to communicate to you. Every single time they've said, well, what are the emotions?
Oh.
So we're going to do a test. Guys, in the comment section below, in 60 seconds, you get 60 seconds to write down as many of emotions as you can. As many emotions as you can. Women, please do the same thing. 60 seconds, and then post how many emotions you could name. That'll be interesting.
Has no one seen Inside Out?
Oh, that is? Okay.
Right, they're all there. Well, a lot of them.
There's hundreds of different emotions, and I've had to study them this year, that's why I know that. But anyways, guys, you need to be able to understand the emotion, being able to reflect it, be able to empathize with it, and don't try to reduce it. One of the main things, people are uncomfortable with emotion, so you see this at funerals all the time. They're uncomfortable with this very negative emotion, and they want to make the person feel better. And so they'll say something well-meaning, but completely kind of off base, like, I don't know, I can't come up with anything right now. But I'm sure you've been in that
Well,
situation.
your grandma was hot. I don't know.
Yeah, that was way off base. All right, so one of the skills, so reflecting, we were talking about reflective listening, now reflecting the emotion. Another skill. Guys, this is probably not a healthy skill. Women can use this too, and I'm giving away a secret. I like to use a communication skill to defuse a situation called calling the shot.
Oh. How does that work?
Let me tell you how this works.
To know.
I may never be able to use this again. This is where you predict how they're going to respond. For example, hon, I know you're going to freak out about this and get angry at me if I tell you this, but, all right? Now, you just called the shot. So if they freak out and get angry with me, I was right. And they don't want that. And so they have to
do that a lot.
It puts them in a psychological
I'm so glad
conundrum.
we had this conversation.
What it is, it's a diffusion tactic, kind of de-escalation tactic, and it's also a good way to start. Well, it may not be the best way. Use it as you see fit. If it doesn't work, it's not my fault. All right.
Oh, I'm
All
on
right.
to you.
So that's another skill I wanted to share, but there's a couple more before we end this video because I want to leave you with more skills here. And I'm just scrolling down my notes. Now, one of the most, a very important thing here is the sequence in which we should go about deciding how we're going to talk about something difficult. And this is the sequence I'll typically recommend to the people I work with. Number one is know your goal, know the outcome you want to reach. If you want everything to be calm at the end, it makes no sense going and starting a fight. Right? So know your goal, know your audience and how they're typically going to respond, so you can call the shot. But you know how to approach them. Also, you need to know yourself, how you'll respond to any negative response back. And then you need to plan your communication. You need to think this through to make sure that you are able to reach the goal and how you want to do that. Now, very important is you have to be flexible because this isn't going to go exactly how you have planned out. And be willing to come back to it at a later time. John Gottman, and we'll post some of his books. He's actually the world-renowned marriage therapist, couples counselor in the world. He runs a research center called the Love Lab. Sounds pretty exciting.
It does sound exciting.
It does. They did some research, and I apologize if I mess this up. This is just off the top of my head, but they had hooked couples up to telemetry that measured heart rate and respiration and all that type of stuff. And they set them both in a room while they're all hooked up and said, what we need you to do is we need you to talk about a very difficult topic, something that you thought about recently. And they would do that. Inevitably they'd start fighting, and then the researchers would come in and say, our telemetry's not working. Let's go ahead and take this off. We'll get it figured out. You go to this room, you go to this room. And basically let the couple calm down. They came back about 15 minutes later, hooked them back up to the telemetry. The telemetry worked the whole time. But what they were doing is, if we give these people basically a break to let their heart rate go down and for them to calm down, can they come back and solve the problem? The vast majority of the time, they were able to.
Wow.
Very important. So, that's an important thing. Be able to let it go. Okay?
But not let it go forever.
No,
right?
no, you always have to come
Step
back
away. Step away.
Yes.
Right.
All right. We're going to have plenty more communication topics coming up.
We forgot to tell our story about the almonds.
We did forget to tell our story about
Yeah,
the
this
almonds.
is so good. I'm sorry. We have to go back to this. So we were talking about, what were we talking about? Like how you perceive, right, what someone is saying. When we were giving the example of like, take out the garbage. Oh, you think I'm lazy. So this was a long time ago. But we went to the mall at Christmas time, and they have those like cinnamon almond little kiosks that you can smell through the whole mall. And I wanted some. I'm like, let's get some almonds. And Ron makes the comment, almonds are fattening. And I lost it. Because my perception was, he's saying that I shouldn't have any almonds because they're fattening and I'm fat and they're going to make me fatter. That was like, we got in a huge argument over cinnamon almonds because of the way I perceived what he said. And I don't think you meant like that I was fat or that I shouldn't have them. You didn't want any, correct?
I was on a very low-fat diet at the time, and so that's why I didn't want them. But then she came at me like a mad dog.
A mad dog.
And we still talk about this is when we were in San Diego for grad school, so it had to have been 16, 17.
Oh yeah,
maybe
this was forever ago. We'll still bring it up from time to time. Remember when we got in that fight about almonds?
Every Christmas.
Every Christmas when we walk into the mall and I say, oh, those almonds smell good. We just have a good laugh.
Well, now that you know our almond story,
Yeah.
let's sign off with this again. Make sure to subscribe to our channel. We have plenty more videos. We're doing a full series on marriage. We're going to come back and talk a lot about depression, trauma, and a number of other mental health issues. So subscribe. Make sure to click on the bell so you get notified anytime we upload anything. And
Yeah, check out our blog.
Check out the blog.
Life Together with Dr. Ron and Heather.
The Facebook page. And also the links that we'll put below, make sure to click on those because it's going to help us continue to make these videos because we get just a little bit of a share of that profit, but you don't have to pay anything extra. So if you click from our YouTube channel to get these books, that'd be greatly appreciated.
And if you like what you're hearing and seeing, tell your friends, share our videos with other people so we can, talk to your friends too.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you so much.
All right. See you again.
See you later.